Hello, awesome people. My name is Mary, and I am one of the friendly librarians here in the East Baton Rouge Parish Library System. This month, we are going to be making DIY God's Eye wall hangings. Just the usual quick heads up, supplies are limited, first come, first serve, and I'd like to give a shout out to the Museum of International Folk Art for this idea. So I imagine a lot of y'all are probably thinking, oh, God's Eyes, I made those at summer camp when I was a kid. Did you know what a God's Eye actually is, though? A God's Eye, also known as an Ojo de Dios in Spanish, originated in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico, specifically with the Huichol people. Traditionally, they were woven for children. When a baby was born, a father would begin weaving it for the child and would add an extra color onto it every year, starting with black at the center, then blue, white, red, and then purple on the outside. And when the child reached 5 years old, the God's Eye was finished. Nowadays, you can go to tourist shops in Mexico and even in some places in the southwestern United States and you can buy them. But obviously they don't have the same symbolic meaning. Obviously you wouldn't, somebody wouldn't make it for some random baby that they don't know. So they don't have the same meaning, and neither does ours. We are not making a God's Eye in the same way that the Huichol people did. We are making something inspired by a God's Eye. So to make this, you will need 2 bamboo skewers. Now, if you don't have bamboo skewers at home, you can use other sticks. You could use wooden dowels, chopsticks, sticks from your yard, even something like pencils. Just make sure they're relatively straight. And you will also need yarn. I will give you 5 different colors of yarn. They might be different colors than what you see here, but they'll be relatively different colors. And you will also need scissors. So to get started, go ahead and put both of your sticks together and tie one end of your yarn around them and tie it into a knot and get it as close to the center of your sticks as you can. If you don't get it perfectly centered, that's fine. You can kind of slide the sticks up and down and around. But once you start really weaving, it'll get really hard to move the sticks. So try to keep it as centered as you can. Next, go ahead and turn one of those sticks so your sticks are perpendicular to one another, kind of making a cross shape. Then start winding your yarn around the sticks so they stay perpendicular. So kind of wind it in between the 2 sticks, then in between the 2 sticks the other way, and kind of crisscross it. Now it's time to start actually weaving. So kind of hold the bottom stick with one hand, and with your other hand start winding the yarn around each stick going clockwise. So you'll start at the top, and then you'll move to the one at your right, then you'll move to the one at the bottom, and you'll kind of want to rotate the sticks as you're winding because it'll get kind of weird once you're starting at the bottom. And I've included this quick little video of me kind of demonstrating with some popsicle sticks and some yarn. So you kind of want to go underneath the stick and then wind it around and move on to the next stick underneath, wind it around, underneath, wind it around, underneath, wind it around. So this is what it'll look like after a while, after you've been weaving for, 4 or 5 turns. This is what it'll look like on the back on your working surface, and this is what it'll look like on the front. So this is the side you'll want to show off when you're done. Okay, but you don't want your whole wall hanging to be one solid color. Of course not. So when you're ready to change colors, cut your yarn, but leave a tail of about 6 inches. Then tie the tail of the new color onto the tail of the old color, and then just continue weaving as you were. The colors will naturally blend into each other. So, quick demonstration. Go ahead and tie those 2 colors into a knot, and then tie them into a knot again. So as you can see, it kind of loops through, and then you'll want to pull that tight. And then once you've pulled that tight, just to be extra secure, I tied a second knot just to make sure it wasn't going to slip out and then fall apart on me. So just go ahead and tie a double knot basically, and it should stay secure while you're weaving. Okay, Okay, then, like I said, just continue weaving, change colors when you're ready, and so on and so on, and eventually you'll have it basically full. So when you're ready to finish, make sure you have at least 1.5 feet or so of tail left on your last color. If you don't, you may want to switch to another color, do a couple of rows of that, so you've got extra tail, because you'll need that tail to tie your loop. Alright, so then go ahead and wrap that yarn a couple of times around the stick that you've designated to be the top of your wall hanging. And once you've wrapped the yarn a few times around the stick, go ahead and tie a knot by making a loop, then passing the tail through that loop, pull it tight, it makes a knot, and repeat that a couple of times. Alright, so to make the actual hanging loop, make a loop at the top, over the top of your stick, and then repeat the previous 2 steps. So wrapping the yarn around the stick, and then tying a knot, while making sure you wrap the yarn around the bottom of that loop. So it looks kind of complicated, but you'll need to use both hands, but it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Just make sure you're wrapping the yarn kind of around both the yarn and the stick at the same time. Then go ahead and flip your wall hanging over, and if you see any of those tails sticking out from the back, go ahead and trim them now. But if they're not sticking out, you really don't have to. It's your choice. Alright, well, at this point, you're basically done, but if you want to make some tassels to hang on the sides of your wall hanging, keep watching and I'll give you a quick tutorial on how to do that. So you should have enough yarn to make at least a couple of tassels. So to make them, you will need 2 pieces of yarn cut off from your main ball. I'd say probably about 1 foot long each. And then, of course, your main ball of yarn. So go ahead and start winding. You take that ball of yarn and start winding it around your hand. So just like the palm and your 4 fingers. I wrapped it around my hand about 20 times. But if you want really fluffy tassels, you'll want to wrap it even more than that. So once you have that yarn wrapped around your hand, gently remove it from your hand. Be very careful, you don't want it to come unraveled. And then take one of those loose pieces of yarn and thread it through all of the loops. Tie it at the top. Then take your scissors and snip all of the loops at the bottom so it looks kind of like a tassel at that point. Or it kind of looks like a mop more than a tassel, but we'll make it look like a tassel soon. Take that other loose piece of yarn and lay your tassel on top of that loose piece of yarn. So it should be about 1/3 to 1/2 of the way from the top of the tassel. Then tie a knot in that loose piece of yarn. It's starting to look kind of like a tassel now. Flip it over and then tie a double knot on the other side. And then trim the tails off. Alright, so to attach your tassels to your wall hanging, go ahead and tie a knot in both strands of the yarn. I tied them around my fingers to start, and then slide it onto the stick, pull it tight. You may want to make sure if you're doing multiple tassels, you want to make sure that they're even. Before you tighten it, kind of adjust the knot, sliding it up or down just to make sure those tassels are even. But if you don't want them to be even, don't worry about it. And with that, you're done. Hang it up on your wall, show it off, looks great. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed making this, and as always, stay awesome.